while national headlines insist Cleveland's quarterback room is an explosive petty war zone waiting to implode under Todd Monken's split-rep protocol, Shedeur Sanders just quietly shattered the entire illusion. Beyond the cameras, Shedeur and Deshaun Watson are personally funding joint Miami passing camps, trading film secrets, and actively preventing a toxic locker room divide. From veteran target dynamics with Jerry Jeudy to Monken's tactical install meetings, their actual daily relationship is built on pragmatic collaboration rather than sabotaging competition. Here is the inside truth about what really happens behind closed doors and why the outcome of this QB battle will completely shock NFL media. We are breaking down every layer of their shared film sessions, the internal mechanics of Monken's offense, and the unspoken pact between two elite passers fighting for the exact same field, all to reveal whether this high-stakes partnership is real or just the calm before an inevitable storm. Standing under the afternoon heat at a Brooklyn youth football camp, surrounded by dozens of young athletes clutching footballs and hanging on his every word, Shedeur Sanders was finally confronted with the question every major sports network had been aggressively hyping for months. The surrounding media contingent expected defensive ambiguity, a rehearsed public relations evasion, or perhaps a subtle flex of ego from a high-profile rookie who had spent his entire life operating under the brightest lights in college sports. Instead, Sanders casually leaned into the microphone and dismantled the entire national conversation with a single, remarkably measured sentence. "We don't have the petty quarterback battles internally. That's not up to us. It's up to whoever the coaches think put their best foot forward." The comment was delivered without heat, edge, or performance, but its calm matter-of-factness reverberated across every major sports blog within minutes. To fully understand why that brief statement landed like a thunderbolt, you have to look at the relentless media circus that had been constructed around the Cleveland Browns quarterback room all off-season. Ever since Sanders arrived, the talking heads across morning sports television had primed audiences for an immediate, explosive collision of massive personalities. On one side sat Deshaun Watson, an established veteran fighting to reclaim his elite standing and justify one of the most talked-about contracts in modern football history. On the other stood Shedeur Sanders, a transcendent brand, a top-tier talent, and a rookie carrying the heavy expectations of a fan base desperate for a dynamic, long-term future. Sensationalist commentary painted the position room as a volatile powder keg, claiming every glance, throw, and practice rep would be analyzed through a lens of subtle sabotage and divided loyalty. Yet, as Sanders made clear on that Brooklyn field, the narrative built for broadcast consumption had almost zero overlap with the actual operational reality inside the building. The national media thrives on friction because conflict drives engagement. A story about two high-profile quarterbacks locked in a bitter, paranoid Cold War generates far more clicks than a story about two elite professionals systematically organizing their workday. Television debate shows framed the situation as a zero-sum territorial war, where every praise of Watson was an implicit slight against Sanders, and every bright flash from Sanders was a direct threat to Watson's livelihood. This framing ignored the fundamental mechanics of how high-level professional sports facilities actually run, treating professional athletes like characters in a contrived melodrama rather than elite specialists focused on complex tactical execution. What Sanders exposed in that single public appearance was the massive gulf between external perception and internal mechanics. Inside the quarterback room, the dynamic isn't defined by dramatic posturing or ego-driven maneuvering. It is defined by the rigid realities of installation schedules, playbooks, and continuous film study. Quarterbacks at this level simply do not have the time or energy to engage in high school level social warfare when they are tasked with mastering hundreds of passing concepts and defensive checks before the morning walkthrough even begins. The tension that the media sells as personal hostility is actually just the high voltage atmosphere of professional competition, a setting where both men understand that their ultimate success depends on how quickly they process information, not how effectively they play to the cameras. Furthermore, Sanders' quote underscored a fundamental truth about modern coaching structures that fans often lose sight of during the height of off-season debate. Quarterbacks do not select the starter, nor do they control the distribution of first-team reps. Their job is strictly focused on execution within the exact parameters set by the coaching staff. By plainly stating that the decision rests entirely with the coaching staff's assessment of who puts their best foot forward, Sanders effectively stepped out of the media's trap. He refused to validate the premise that the relationship was personal, redirecting the focus back to objective evaluation and preparation. It was an answer that revealed an unexpectedly mature grasp of professional boundaries, signaling that while the public might want a feud, the players involved are far more interested in doing their jobs. Ultimately, that Brooklyn statement serves as the critical lens through which this entire quarterback dynamic must be analyzed. It was the first explicit crack in the wall of media speculation, offering a direct view into how Sanders views his environment, his competition, and his veteran teammate. Rather than stepping into a volatile environment designed to tear the locker room apart, both Sanders and Watson have chosen to navigate their shared reality with a surprising level of professional pragmatic transparency. The friction that external observers desperate for drama keep searching for simply fails to materialize when you examine the actual daily routine of the room. The true story of this position battle isn't about two rivals trying to undermine each other from the shadows. It is about two hyper-competitive passers operating within a shared space, completely ignoring the noise outside while they focus entirely on the football. The tangible proof of this unconventional dynamic surfaced far away from team headquarters, down in the humid heat of South Florida during the quietest stretch of the summer calendar. Rather than splitting into rival factions or hosting separate, competing workout sessions as many outside analysts openly predicted, Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson took an entirely unexpected step. They jointly organized and personally co-hosted an intensive, self-funded passing camp in Miami for Cleveland's skill position players, bringing together key offensive weapons including veteran wideout Jerry Jeudy, rising talents like Cedric Tillman and Isaiah Bond, and backfield contributors on their own dime. The two quarterbacks created an environment dedicated entirely to sharpening team chemistry, timing, and route execution outside the rigid confines of official team facilities. By financing the logistics and flying in their teammates, Sanders and Watson sent an unmistakable signal to the entire organization. This wasn't a PR stunt designed to generate positive press clippings. It was an investment in operational efficiency driven by two signal callers who recognized that their individual success depends heavily on the collectively elevated performance of the offense around them. In an era where star quarterbacks often guard their off-season regimens like state secrets, co-leading a workout series required an extraordinary level of shared intent. Off the field, the group bonded over shared meals and relaxed settings, establishing a genuine camaraderie that laid the groundwork for an open, ego-free line of communication when the cleats came on and film study began. That mutual commitment translated directly into how both quarterbacks approach their daily tape sessions and field work. Explaining the internal mechanics of their professional relationship, Sanders demystified what outsiders assumed was a tense environment by revealing a process anchored in complete tactical transparency. "We're both trying to be the best version of ourselves we could be," Sanders noted when detailing how the two navigate their daily interactions. "We are not really emotional when it comes to things that we can't control. We mainly focus on and thrive on getting better in the work every day. So if I like something he's doing, I ask. If he likes something I do, he asks. It's conversation, and that's what's most effective." This organic exchange of intelligence strips away the drama often associated with high-stakes position battles. When Watson executes a subtle pre-snap adjustment or manipulates a safety with a specific eye movement, Sanders doesn't stew in envy. He asks for the exact thought process behind the move. Conversely, when Sanders displays his signature quick-release placement on third-down touch throws, Watson actively probes into the footwork mechanic that allowed for such rapid balance. By treating every rep as shared laboratory data rather than proprietary property, both quarterbacks effectively accelerate each other's processing speed, turning what could be an isolating competition into a mutually beneficial exchange of elite quarterbacking knowledge. From a strategic standpoint, this cold professional pragmatism makes perfect sense for both athletes, regardless of how conflicting their career timelines might appear on paper. For Deshaun Watson, maintaining a supportive, open dialogue removes unnecessary internal toxicity during a career-defining junction where total focus on execution is paramount. Engaging in petty political games inside the quarterback room would only create cognitive clutter, distracting from the immense pressure to perform at an elite level. By actively mentoring and conversing with Sanders, Watson fosters an atmosphere of mutual respect that protects his own mental clarity while establishing himself as a baseline standard for leadership inside the building. For Shedeur Sanders, absorbing every nuance of Watson's veteran perspective offers an invaluable shortcut through the steep NFL learning curve. A young quarterback who shuts himself off from a veteran teammate out of misdirected pride deprives himself of years of accumulated defensive recognition and situational wisdom. Sanders understands that his long-term trajectory depends entirely on his mastery of complex defensive coverages and pocket-subtle nuances, areas where a seasoned starter's feedback can prove far more detailed than coach speak alone. By prioritizing dialogue over posturing, Sanders transforms his competitor into an active catalyst for his own professional growth. Ultimately, this blueprint of collaborative, pragmatic professionalism reveals a level of business intellect rarely highlighted by narrative-driven broadcasts. Sanders and Watson have calculated that personal friction serves neither of their interests in the win column or on the stat sheet. They operate under a shared realization that whoever takes the field under center will operate far more effectively if the entire unit, from the receiving core to the offensive line, is operating in complete sync. By putting their money, time, and collective energy into building a unified front in Miami, both quarterbacks have ensured that the Browns' offense enters the year built on a foundation of work ethic and shared intelligence, completely immune to the manufactured noise outside the stadium doors. While the self-funded summer workouts in Miami established personal baseline chemistry, the true test of this quarterback dynamic began the moment both players stepped inside the team meeting rooms under new leadership. Rather than allowing position room competition to fester into secret rivalries or secretive subgroups, the coaching staff deliberately designed an environment where transparency and open debate are mandatory. Central to this approach is a restructured meeting dynamic where installation sessions are built around active dialogue rather than passive lecture. In these installs, quarterbacks aren't simply instructed on play calls, they are regularly tasked with dissecting pre-snap looks and defensive coverage rotations out loud in front of the entire offensive staff and receiving unit. This interactive format completely changes the social friction inside the room. Instead of isolating Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders into separate operational tracks, install meetings demand that both signal callers continuously speak the same tactical language. When a complex pressure package is drawn up on the whiteboards, Monken's structure forces both quarterbacks to break down line calls, protection slides, and hot route adjustments together in real time. If Watson spots a subtle nuance in safety depth from past game film, he explains it to the room. When Sanders offers a fresh perspective on a seam concept route angle, the idea is debated on its merits rather than dismissively brushed aside. By making every film study session an open intellectual laboratory, the coaching staff effectively neutralizes the passive-aggressive isolation that so often destroys competing quarterback rooms. Outside the meeting room and onto the practice field, this philosophy manifests in a meticulously structured split-rep protocol. Rather than assigning fixed first-team and second-team roles that could inadvertently signal a premature winner, practice schedules are engineered to divide high-leverage reps under virtually identical tactical conditions. On any given day, both Watson and Sanders operate with the primary starting offensive line and top-tier receiving targets against the exact same defensive looks. This split rep system strips away environmental variables, ensuring that performance evaluation is based entirely on objective processing speed, cadence control, and execution accuracy rather than the talent level of the surrounding unit. Under this protocol, evaluation goes far beyond simple box score metrics like completions or pass attempts during team periods. The coaching staff scrutinizes how quickly each quarterback asserts pre-snap autonomy at the line of scrimmage, evaluating their ability to diagnose defensive shifts, manipulate protection calls under play clock pressure, and maintain command over the huddle. Post-snap, the focus shifts to timing, throw placement, and decision-making under stress. Because both quarterbacks run identical play packages against identical defensive fronts, the footage gathered from practice film provides an unvarnished, head-to-head comparison of how each passer processes information under pressure. Crucially, this structured division of snaps prevents player frustration from building within the locker room. In standard training camp settings, a quarterback relegated strictly to second-team reps can easily feel frozen out of the evaluation process, fostering internal resentment that bleeds into media speculation. Monken's split-rep approach ensures that both Watson and Sanders have equal access to primary reps, putting the ultimate burden of proof directly on their own shoulders. Every play becomes an objective performance benchmark rather than a political statement, creating an environment where reps are earned exclusively through execution. This deliberate coaching infrastructure has transformed what could have been a chaotic quarterback battle into a controlled, high-standard competition. By creating installed meetings that require constant communication and implementing a practice framework built on equal tactical opportunity, the staff has eliminated the ambiguity that typically fuels position battles. Sanders and Watson aren't left to guess where they stand or compete for secret leverage. They operate within a system that demands daily accountability and mutual clarity. As a result, the internal QB dynamic remains locked in on shared preparation, giving Cleveland an offensive foundation built on genuine work rather than manufactured drama. Inside any high-stakes quarterback competition, the quietest yet most dangerous rift usually forms around target distribution and receiver chemistry. In Cleveland, that dynamic took on a visible public dimension when reports and viral social media clips highlighted an apparent split in wide receiver preferences. Established veterans like Jerry Jeudy have naturally gravitated toward the rhythm and deep anticipation born from Deshaun Watson's years of veteran experience. Jeudy, accustomed to a specific cadence and spatial timing downfield, thrives on the subtle pre-snap adjustments Watson brings to the line. Meanwhile, younger wideouts, including rising talents like Cedric Tillman and Isaiah Bond, have shown an unmistakable chemistry with Shedeur Sanders, responding eagerly to his ball placement, quick trigger timing, and communicative leadership style. This divide between veteran target comfort and young receiver enthusiasm presented a classic locker room hazard: the formation of position group cliques. In less disciplined organizations, when a top receiver publicly or privately favors one passer, it creates an immediate ripple effect across the offense. Route runners begin running routes slightly harder for their preferred signal caller, target complaints increase during film review, and subtle body language leaks onto the practice field. Left unchecked, a target preference issue can quickly metastasize into a full-blown locker room fracture, forcing offensive coaches to call plays tailored to personal comfort rather than system productivity. Recognizing this risk early, both Sanders and Watson took direct responsibility for neutralizing potential receiver factions before they could disrupt the team's offensive rhythm. Rather than feeding into the preference narrative or allowing target share grievances to linger, the two quarterbacks actively cross-rotated during route tree drills and informal throwing sessions. Sanders made a deliberate effort to spend extended post-practice time throwing to Jeudy and veteran tight ends, honing the precise timing required on contested leverage routes. Simultaneously, Watson spent dedicated extra sessions working with the younger wideout core, ensuring that every receiver on the roster gained comfort with both quarterbacks' throwing mechanics and ball placement. By proactively breaking down these operational silos, Sanders and Watson ensured that route execution remained tied to the offensive scheme rather than personal allegiance. Their joint leadership conveyed a firm message to the entire receiving corps. Regardless of who holds up what signal or who takes the first snap on Sunday, every route must be run with absolute precision. By prioritizing total offensive unity over individual target preferences, the two signal callers successfully diffused what could have been an explosive media talking point, transforming a potential locker room wedge into a shared standard of professional execution across the entire passing attack. The maturity curve that Shedeur Sanders has displayed since arriving in Cleveland provides a dramatic counter-narrative to the pre-draft echo chamber that once threatened to define his professional identity. Before stepping into an NFL facility, national draft coverage was saturated with anonymous scouting critiques, painting Sanders as an uncoachable, brand-obsessed diva whose high-profile background and family legacy made him a risky fit for a blue-collar locker room. Critics pointed to his refusal to participate in standard combine drills and questioned whether his self-assured persona could adapt to the rigorous, humbling demands of professional football. Yet, from the moment he put on a Browns practice jersey, Sanders has methodically dismantled those preconceptions through quiet, consistent professionalism. Rather than demanding a starting spotlight or relying on media leverage, he has embraced a steady work ethic, letting his preparation and field performance speak far louder than any pre-draft caricature. This unexpected public poise has completely shifted the external perception of Cleveland's quarterback situation. By maintaining an even-keeled demeanor, handling media scrutiny with understated calm, and focusing entirely on playbook mastery, Sanders has proven that his confidence is rooted in preparation rather than entitlement. His ability to step into a volatile setting, competing directly against an established high-earning veteran like Deshaun Watson, and immediately foster an environment of shared accountability, speaks volumes about his underlying character. Far from bringing a distracting entourage or generating internal friction, Sanders has conducted himself like a seasoned professional who understands that respect in an NFL locker room must be earned on the practice field every single day. For the Cleveland Browns organization and offensive coordinator Todd Monken, this genuine internal unity changes everything about how the quarterback competition will ultimately play out. In typical high-stakes QB battles, coaching staffs are forced to walk a delicate political tightrope, terrified that naming a winner will alienate half the locker room or trigger toxic backstabbing from the player relegated to the bench. But because Sanders and Watson have built their relationship on mutual respect, joint off-season work, and open film room dialogue, Monken's decision becomes vastly simpler. The coaching staff can evaluate the position entirely on football merit, relying strictly on pre-snap processing speed, accuracy under pressure, and drive efficiency without fearing and destructive public fallout. Crucially, the healthy foundation established between these two signal callers guarantees that whoever loses the starting job will not undermine the winner. If Watson earns the starting node, Sanders has already demonstrated the humility and commitment necessary to serve as a focused, supportive backup, continuing to learn the system while staying ready to step in at a moment's notice. If Sanders wins the job, Watson's existing mentorship dynamic ensures he won't retreat into bitter isolation, but will instead offer veteran counsel from the sideline. Instead of being torn apart by narrative-driven turmoil, the Cleveland Browns have cultivated a rare quarterback environment where relentless competition and genuine mutual support exist side by side, ensuring the team moves forward as a single, unified force.